Mike Murray.
This
is
SNL.
SNL
By the numbers.
Numbers.
There's no place like Rome. Who is Satoshi Gutman? Isn't that special? There's the opening haiku for you. I'm your host, Mike Murray, and this is SNL By The Numbers, the home of SNL stats. Tonight we are covering episode 976 of Saturday Night Live, hosted by Paul Mescal with musical guest Shaboozey. This podcast is a presentation of latenighter.com. First guest back in the house, Rebecca North. I don't know if I've seen you since New York, but how have you been the last 8 months?
I've been good. Missing you, Mike. The first time I was on here, which was my first time, which was, I think, right after you were in New York, I, too, led with a haiku. So I'm going to do the same with today's episode.
Let's go.
Wow.
Hype to chat with y'all. Thanks for having me back, Mike. Love Paul Mescal's thighs.
There you have it. That's the second time there's been a guest haiku, both by Rebecca North, if you're keeping stats. So thank you for that. Sammy Kay is my next guest. Let me hear your haiku.
Listen, I wish we coordinated this. Haiku, what is the count? That I
it's
get
575.
I think I pretty much covered it, I would say. Maybe one or I gave you a little extra syllable or two there. Just the haiku stopped a couple words ago, but yeah, I'm next time. I'm doing well, Mike. Always great to sit across the virtual desk with you, and also great to have Rebecca here as well. This is a very solid crew, so I'm excited to break down the numbers here for this episode.
This panel is for the hardcores and the casuals, I think.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, so it's December. It's a big, Christmas SNL day in history. So let's go back in time.
Now I just popped this chicken dinner in and send it back in time.
1976, we got season 2. Candace Bergen hosts for the third time and only the first 35 episodes of SNL. And it was her second Christmas show. So she had hosted the very first Christmas show. This time she appeals to the audience at home to adopt Belushi for Christmas. We get the first ever Rockefeller Plaza skating good nights. So I'd love to see that for season 50. In 1982, season 8, Eddie Murphy becomes the first and only active cast member to host the show, stepping in for his 48 Hours co-star Nick Nolte. And Eddie famously announced in the cold open, live from New York, it's the Eddie Murphy Show. 1993, season 19, we have Sally Field on a Christmas show. Sandler opens with, not as famous as the Hanukkah song, but very similar with Santa Don't Like Bad Boys in the cold open. We have Chris Farley making his third appearance as Matt Foley, this time as Motivational Santa. Rob Schneider sings 2 songs in the show, including Blue Christmas with the SNL Band. We have the 5th and final appearance of Phil Hartman as Jesus. Then we go on to 1999. Danny DeVito back for the 6th time on a Christmas show. We have the first appearance of Molly Shannon, Sally O'Malley. So she's done that character in officially the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s, I think. So we have 4 decades of Sally O'Malley. We have the 10th appearance of Delicious Dish, so Good Night for Molly. And REM perform Man on the Moon, their song for Andy Kaufman, for some SNL lore right there. 2004, season 30, we got Colin Farrell, fellow Irish host that night. He also does an impression of Bono. I guess it's a rite of passage if you're an Irish guy hosting SNL. Lindsay Lohan, hottest moment of her career. She had just hosted after Mean Girls came out earlier that year. She cameos in the monologue where like Seth Meyers and Fred Armisen, a bunch of cast members, all take turns hitting on her until Colin Farrell succeeds by just saying, whiskey and cigarettes works every time. Going over to 2010, season 36, the Paul Rudd and McCartney Christmas episode. Big fan favorite. It's like the most 2010 episode of all time. So, Sammy, that's like your era, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, listen to this lineup.
That one. Yeah.
We got the Vogel checks. So you remember them, the family that's very affectionate. We have a What's That Name? We have an SNL digital short, Stumbling, where McCartney and Rudd are in there. Fred Armisen's producer, Roger Brush, giving the sex advice. He's in there. The first appearance of Jay Farrow's principal, attention teachers and students. And we get a Stefan on Update. So, Rebecca, is that the most 2010 rundown you've ever heard?
Yeah, that's kind of iconic. I need to go watch that one after we wrap up tonight. It sounds like a good one.
Yeah, season 36, that's 2010 on this date, December 11th. And then finally, season 47, we have Billie Eilish double duty in 2021. So if you remember in that season, Kate McKinnon made a triumphant return to the cast. She was out for the first 7 episodes filming her Peacock Tiger King show. And she got over 14 minutes of screen time, the highest of anyone that season in the cast. Got that Lonely Christmas pre-tape. That was great. And a big night for Dismukes Nation. We had the Baby Jesus in the Nativity play and Andy's Amazing Animals on Weekend Update. So that's the day.
Can I just quickly hold space for the Kate McKinnon Tiger King Peacock show? That
I didn't know that was happening.
That was a thing that was filmed like a year and a half after the Tiger King phenomenon. Crazy times.
And I spoke about it so often and never turned it on once.
Free promo.
You also held space for Tiger King? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, of course. What else were we doing then?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, well, April of 2020, like peak COVID, that was a Tiger King phenomenon. And then, yeah, like Sammy said, we go into the fall of 21 where Kate McKinnon's like, I'm going to be out for the first half of the year in Australia playing Carol Baskin. It's just what my career needs right now, but I'll see y'all when Billy's in the building. And that's what we got. So we'll take the chicken back out of the time microwave.
Now I just pop this chicken dinner in and send it back in time.
All right. So Rebecca, you mentioned him in your haiku. What are your thoughts going into this week with Paul Mescal hosting? I'll admit, he's an Irish guy. I'm all Irish. Love to see that. Love representation on the screen for people like me, but didn't know who the guy was. So I'm going to you. What do you think about Paul and what should I watch that he's in other than Gladiator, the musical?
So honestly, they really nailed it on the head. Clearly, I was not the only person that was like, I've never seen him be funny before. So although he's really, really nice to look at and like it just pops up in pop culture pretty often, I didn't know what to expect from him from a comedic standpoint because I've really never seen him in that point. So I was excited, but like a little hesitant to like fully show my excitement because like it could have been a huge flop, honestly, because of just we don't know him in that sense. But he's been in a bunch of things. He's been in the show. I'm literally blanking on the name, but I watched it all.
Normal People.
Normal People. He was in the movie. This movie again. I'm blanking on the name of this one too, but I watched
After
it. Didn't
Sun.
like the movie. No, not that. Give it another shot.
All of Us Strangers.
Yes, All of Us Strangers, which I left. I was sitting in the theater at that one, and people were audibly sobbing, and I didn't know what happened. I like left it. I was like, wait, how did that end? I'm confused. So I like him more from a pop culture perspective, but like I have not consumed a ton of his other work, and I've never seen him like just be funny. Even today, came out The Actors on Actors with Ariana Grande, and he was just very serious too in that way. So I was excited to see him. I knew that they would make fun of his shorts. That's kind of a given. And then I'm glad they did address fully in the monologue that like, hey, you're not funny. So how are you going to be funny tonight?
Sammy on the spot right there. I mean, me and Sammy have some great film discussion. I'm more of a cinephile of old. He's more of a modern cinephile. So he keeps me abreast of what's going on.
That was impressive because honestly, I just had a brain.
I love to keep you abreast, Mike, of what's going on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's look at how he did this week. So we're going to do the cast, and then we'll look at Paul's numbers in a second. And then, Rebecca, I almost hit you up today to help me identify all the recent hot guy hosts to see how we stacked up with them. So I did my best, for my POV. But if you think of any that I missed, let me know. But let's look at the full numbers here. So Paul Mescal, 22 minutes, 39 seconds. So he did very well for a first-time host and for a non-comedy host. We have Heidi Gardner after 147 episodes of her career high, 12 minutes, 56 seconds. Following her, Andrew Dismukes in 4 appearances cracks the 10 minutes 10 minutes 9 for Dismukes. Marcelo on a heater, following the short and sweet Sabrina Carpenter appearance, follows up with 7 minutes 50 seconds. Sarah Sherman also at 7 minutes even. Shaboozey, my buddy Darren, playing the drums. You got to see him on TV. Shout out to you, Darren. He had 6 minutes 52 seconds. Dana Carvey in the cold open, of course, as no other character appeared in more decades than Sally O'Malley, Church Lady, 6:44. Bowen Yang in 4 appearances, 6 minutes 4 seconds. Jadge, James Austin Johnson, no Trump, but 5:47 in the screen time. Ashley Padilla, 5 minutes 5. Now we're going below 5 minutes. We have Michael Che. So take that, haters. Michael Che had more screen time than Colin Jost. He had 4 minutes 45 seconds. Emil Wakim, 4:22. Mikey Day, 4:21. Ego Wodum, 4:19. Colin Jost, 4:18. Chloe Feynman, 4:06. Then we have a big drop off here. So now we're under 2 minutes. Devin Walker, 1:54. David Spade in church chat as Hunter Biden, 1:45. Martin Herlihy, 1:42. John Higgins, 1:30. Tie with Ben Marshall at 1:30. Jane Wickline, 1:25. Keenan Thompson, another really low week after the Charlie XCX episode where he didn't appear till like 12:40 a.m. And this week he had 1:24. So a very similar screen time to the last episode. Michael Longfellow with a classic night, 3 appearances, 1:12. Carl Tart, new writer. I think this will be the first of many appearances. 35 seconds for him. He was in one of the Devo hats in the green suits. So he didn't have any lines, but shout out to Carl Tart. We have Trisha Paytas, 33 seconds. Phil Hartman opening the night with 3 seconds of some posthumous voice work. So love to see Phil Hartman's name on the chart. Steve Higgins also with 3 seconds of voice work. And Josh Patton, writer of SNL, as the voice of the squirting cucumber on Update with a second of screen time. Rebecca, who do you want to discuss tonight? Let's open it up.
First of all, Shada, getting there a second of screen time is more iconic than honestly Heidi's most iconic night, because that is incredible that they grabbed you. They were like, this is your moment to shine at 1 second. So go off Josh Patton. But I feel like the obvious person just to really talk about here was Heidi. It felt like she was hosting the show. And I was so okay with it because anytime she was on the screen tonight, it was just like knocked it out of the park. I thought 12 minutes made sense. When you were just saying before that Kate was in 14 minutes of the Billy episode, the first thing that said is like, oh, did Heidi beat that this episode? Because it really felt like she did. Every time I was looking at her, I was really, really excited. So really glad that she's having such a big night. And then another person that I thought would have a higher time, but didn't, was Emil. I feel like we were seeing him a lot on the screen, and maybe it's because he looks just like Luigi, the UHC shooter. But I was really, my eyes were drawn to him, that I was just like, I think you're on this a lot more than the 4 minutes that he was. It kind of felt like a big night for him, but it also could be a big night relative to the rest of the season. And like,
it was a career high for Emil. I mean, he had 417 in the Bill Burr show, 358 in the Keaton show, and this one 422. So career high for him.
Maybe he had more lines this episode than he has in the past. But like, I definitely noticed him and Heidi as like my standouts from the cast members this episode.
And Emil got the first sketch of the night. So looking back of his screen time for first sketch, he only had 43 seconds. So like the first live sketch post monologue, he had 43 seconds before this night, and he led the sketch with Heidi at the earring sketch. So that was some big exposure for Emil. But yeah, Sammy, I'll go over to you. Who do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, just jumping on the Emil point, I had like the exact same feeling. Just I feel like a lot of times it's hard to, put the sort of impact a sketch has compared to the numbers, like to really show like the actual, the reality of the situation. But for me, like that sketch was such a highlight that I was expecting him, to have a lot more screen time in this episode. And he appeared in kind of bit roles in, I guess, 2 other sketches. But I guess just seeing Mikey Day like right under him by a second kind of continues the sort of storyline this season of sort of Mikey Day as that utility player, getting the dad roles and sketches and things like that. We're obviously seeing less and less of that happen. I mean, he had a great part in the Gladiator 2 sketch, which I really enjoyed. And I think he helped write that one as well. But I think from a casting perspective, I've noticed that they're starting to make a lot of different decisions, not always going to the seasoned vet for this type of person or that type of person. Even like in the courtroom sketch, having Bowen play the judge. I feel like maybe you'd see like a JJ or an Ego play the judge in maybe a season or two ago. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess let's talk about it right now. Is like Bowen, he's now a vet though, right? And so I mean, he's came in 45, and so we've had now like the class of 46, so we have Dismukes left, and then the class of 47 we have Sarah and JJ, and then 48 we still have Longfellow, Devin, and Marcelo. No 49 people left, and then we have the rookies this year. So like Bowen and Ego, of course, and Chloe Feynman are like totally the vets now, right, Sammy?
Yeah, I mean they're definitely the vets. But yeah, no, I mean I like that choice to have Bowen in that sort of judge sketch, especially after I don't know if you guys saw that sort of viral tweet that was going around of Bowen on Trisha Paddish's podcast saying how he has a crush on Dismuke. So having the Dismukes and Bowen dynamic in that sketch was nice to see.
Oh,
Also,
is this
it's
nice.
breaking
News, Sammy?
That's breaking news. Yeah,
All
he
right.
kind of gave flowers to a lot of the cast on the show, including Emil, but he did say he had a little crush on Dismukes.
All right. Well, you heard it here second, Rebecca.
Well, also
reaction.
the Bowen of it all is, I thought he was actually gonna have a higher screen time this episode too, just because I also just love him. So I feel like whenever he's in something, I get really excited and like focus on him a lot. But I do like that we are starting to see him more as the judge, and he's being more straight, not in like the sexual way, of like the more just level-headed character. And she's usually more of a spectacle in the same way that I think about Sarah Sherman, and she's usually the spectacle of the sketch that she's in. Same with Bowen. And I feel like as they're starting to progress, I think it shows such like character growth and strength on the show that he can be playing a really weird artist / podcaster and then playing a judge that was the very, very level-headed, the straight character of the scene, to be like, okay, no, this isn't going to work for me here. And I love seeing him and Sarah in that. And I love when they get their time to shine and not like be the big personalities that they are. But I think it's a true testament to a strong cast member that you could do both and not stand out and just kind of be a good like utility player.
Agreed. I mean, Sarah has just put together 2 great episodes. She had over 10 minutes last episode, career high with Charlie, and now 7 minutes this week. I did have an interesting comment in the chat from Scott. So he said, how much posthumous screen time has there been in 2020s? So I only had one other example, and it was the last SNL at Home episode where we had or the second to last SNL at Home, we had a tribute to Hal Wilner. So I had a little bit of posthumous screen time when they did a little tribute, and they had a lot of old cast members back for that, talking about Hal Wilner. So there's your answer to that question. But first time I got to type in the name Phil Hartman in my SNL stat days. So that was great. So let's talk about Paul's performance, because listening to the roundtable on Monday night, it was mentioned like he didn't crack the top 5 for the MVP votes. And maybe it was because of screen time and his exposure and stuff. So, but then it turned out, doing the stats, he got the 3rd highest screen time of a host this season. So only behind Bargatze and Bill Burr, who both had long stand-up monologues. So that means that Paul Mescal did have more screen time than John Mulaney, which I think is the headline for me for a host. So he ended up being 75th percentile. So that means he had a larger impact on his episode than 3/4 of SNL hosts of the past 130 episodes. So that's a pretty good night for a first timer in general. And, for a hot guy host, that's pretty good. So let's start with this, Rebecca. I want to get your takes, and maybe you can remember some that I missed. I was like, all right, who are the other recent quote unquote hot guy hosts? And I was thinking like people who aren't known for being funny, who are first timers and ladies love. So I got Paul Mescal, who had 2230. That's without the musical performance intros. But then Austin Butler, Michael B. Jordan, Reggae Jean Page, and Jacob Elordi. So that's the screen time ranking. Austin Butler had 20 minutes 2. Michael B. Jordan, 19 minutes 59 seconds. Reggae Jean Page, 1936. And Jacob Elordi, 1626. So Elordi gets a lot of shit on this podcast, especially from Bill Kenny, but he wasn't in the episode a ton. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But Rebecca, I don't know if there's any other ones you can think of recently.
No, I feel like you kind of got it. The number one in my mind was Jacob Elordi to be like recent Hawkeye host. You kind of got it. I mean, I would personally add John Mulaney in my Hawkeye host list, but I understand why he didn't make it.
Yeah, I mean, because I almost thought Chalamet. What do we think about Timmy?
Okay. I would say yes. Like historically, he doesn't do it for me, but like yes, he does have the rep of being a Hawkeye.
And then thinking about his episode, it was like a very heavy COVID influenced episode. Like he came back and he had way more screen time. Now he's a friend of the show. But all the names I just listed are like, other than Michael B. Jordan, I hadn't heard of before the show. So it was kind of like a big break for comedy and for a wider audience. But let's look at his breakdown. So Sammy, I want to ask you, was there a moment? Well, first of all, tell me how you think he did. But was there a moment during his night that you're like, this guy can do comedy, or no?
You know, I think he overall did like a pretty solid job. Like I think a lot of people like, making the Elordi comparison, definitely not like a Elordi level performance. Like I think he for what the show gave him did a solid job. I think they definitely leaned on the cast more, and he was in every sketch, but the red carpet sketch, he kind of comes in, halfway to 2/3 of the way through as Bono. The earring sketch, like he's in it the entire time, but really Emil and Heidi are kind of doing the heavy lifting. He was a good straight man. I think for me, the performance that I love the most, which kind of makes sense because it was a pre-tape, maybe a little bit more comfortable, was the Gladiator 2 musical performance. I think he's going to be in a musical that Richard Linklater's directing, Merrily We Go Along,
yeah, he's
right?
going to be in Merrily.
Which will come out in like 30 years, right?
Yes.
Like, because they're actually filming like a year, like every year for like 30 years, which is like crazy.
Yeah, it's like with Ben Platt and Beanie also.
For is this like Boyhood too?
It's literally like Boyhood.
Yes.
I mean, I think like isn't the plot of the musical like kind of like it takes place over like decades essentially. So he's doing that, but for 30 years. Anyways, so we'll see that in 30 years. But yeah, being able to see him in this Gladiator 2 sketch, he sings, he dances, and he sings and dances in like a funny way. Like I thought it had a lot of good comedic timing. The choreography of him, slicing and dicing while he's singing, I thought that was really good. So I would say as a first-time host, not somebody who, if they were to announce in 2 or 3 years that he's coming back, I would welcome it. I'd be like, all right, like let's see what you can do. I'm not clamoring for him to come back, but I think he did a good enough job for me to not be mad about him hosting a second time.
And got to play really well with PDD, as himself. So it's always funny when remind me of Bad Bunny as Shrek, as in, we don't really know what you're about, like personally. So what if you were like that? Like, what if Bad Bunny really did go to the writers and say, like, I'm going to be Shrek tonight? So what if Paul Mescal was in love with PDD? So Sammy, you raise an interesting point about his appearances as far as like maybe being the comedic role versus the straight role. Because, all right, I'm going to get some deep analytics here, so bear with me. But he ranked 20th in appearance score. And how I calculate that, it's a big part of the power rankings, is totaling up everyone's appearances and seeing who has like the biggest piece of the pie going down the pecking order. And in his 9 appearances, 8 of them, I deemed him an A role. So the one Sammy mentioned of him being Bono, like very B role, like Heidi led the sketch. And Jadge as Bob Dylan was there like the whole time. So like they really were like the quarterbacking it, but he kind of just came in. So I think that because Oh, because Sydney Sweeney went 10 for 10. So I did have a theory when I was thinking of like hot guys hosting SNL was like, what about hot women and just in general putting very attractive people on screen and kind of making the sketch revolve around them. So maybe it makes sense that he has that high of an appearance score. So 20th best out of the last 130 episodes. So he was always a lead role, except for that one. Not always the funny role, but Rebecca, how do you think he did?
Yeah, like he specifically did not make me laugh that much. I think you brought up like the Gladiator too. I thought he was awesome, but like Mikey really took that for me. And like, I don't think he was the standout star on that when I will look back at the sketch. I think the Please Don't Destroy, he did a great job. And I really got to see him. I thought it was slowly building. So like the earring, we started there and I was like, okay, it wasn't really fully him. That was like funny. Then we get a Gladiator too. He made me laugh, but like nothing crazy. The Italian restaurant, I honestly thought like he was pretty funny and like I wasn't laughing out loud. I think of all the sketches, that was probably my least favorite of the night to begin with. But like he wasn't really like he wasn't not funny, but he was funny enough that I was like, you are kind of supposed to be the funny person in this. And then when it got to the Please Don't Destroy, I was like hype because I'm like, we're halfway through. Like he has got it. Look at him. Like he's doing it right now. I thought he was kind of the backbone of that one, but then as it moved completely past that, I don't think he like led any of it at all in like terms of being the funny person or even like making the remarks. So it was a build up that I like was like, this is going to be gradual. He's getting more comfortable. And then like, it wasn't, but I don't think it was him at all. I think it was the writing on this one that was like, we aren't sure of your comedic chops and maybe this could have been at table reads and who knows the reasons why, but they were like, this is our cast's night to shine. And like, we had a couple standouts of each sketch and a lot of it was just the cast. And I'm not opposed to that at all. I think it was fine. I really did feel like Heidi hosted the episode. So it was an enjoyable episode all in all, but I don't think he was the best host. And I don't know how excited I would be to see him again.
I feel like I left pleasantly surprised going in and having never seen his face. So I had no preconceived notions about how he would do. And then, like you mentioned, the Italian restaurant sketch, that was the biggest piece of his night. He had 4 minutes, 17 seconds of screen time. So it was longer than his monologue, which was 3:38. So 19% of his night was in that sketch alone, 16% in his monologue, which you assume a higher number usually because you're always on camera for that typically. And then, yeah, he had 13.3% of his night for 3 minutes was in the Pirates sketch. We didn't mention that one, but, you know, he was like the leader of the Pirates. But a lot of these sketches, like that might have been one where he was supposed to be the funny one because the cast was more reacting to him, where I think you guys both raised a good point of these kind of newer hosts that you have the cast always be the wacky people. Spotify Wrapped, I guess that one, he's kind of the wacky one for the game of the sketch, but really Bowen because he's the crazy character that comes in. So, you know, all in all interesting, but his breakdown, 67% live sketch, 17% pre-tape, 16% monologue. So, who do you think, Rebecca, should be the next hot guy to host SNL as we move on?
Ooh, this is good. I mean, Andrew Garfield would be a really good one.
Has been on the show in a monologue, but yeah, you good
but
to
like
host.
I think I also think he'd be a good host because I think he's goofy in the way that like we kind of need. Also,
he's
never
hosted.
Garfield? Let me check that real quick. I don't remember him hosting.
Not.
Or maybe I feel like him and Emma Stone did. Yeah, weren't they like really like close together and then that they were in each other's monologue, or he popped back in for the monologue? Yeah, let me fact check that.
He hosted in 2014.
Not remembering if he did.
He hosted in 2014.
Okay, so
for Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Also, Jonathan Bailey is another one, and I think he would be awesome. Like he has it. I also think a lot of Broadway people can adapt because a lot of Broadway is being funny in that, and I feel like when it comes time for Wicked 2, I know like Fiera becomes an even bigger role in the movie. I would put a ton of money down that Cynthia Erivo hosts in promo for Wicked 2, but I'd be really, really down for Jonathan Bailey too as well. So, And he's got some other things coming out, so maybe that's hope. And he's gorgeous, so I think that'd be fun.
And is this the fellow that Ariana ended up with?
No.
Okay.
No. That is Ethan Slater. And I mean, I also don't know him enough to know if he'd be a good host. Jonathan Bailey, though, is unfortunately not straight. Otherwise, I do think Ariana might have headed in that direction over Ethan Slater. But at least that's what I would do if I was on that set.
I mean, I don't know if I say unfortunately, nothing wrong with being gay, but you know, unfortunately, he's straight. Like, no, it's okay. So season 39 was Garfield. So
unfortunately for Ariana.
Play. Oh yeah, true. In context. Yeah, so I remember like around that time was Seth Rogen was before him, and then Charlize Theron, and then Andy Samberg for the finale. So that was the end of season 39. So I guess I don't recall the Garfield, but I remember him.
How do you do? Clearly not that well. If neither one of us remembered him being a host recently.
I wanted him to come back and host when he was promoting Tick Tick Boom, but didn't happen. Didn't happen.
All right, so I think I talk about my love for Heidi Gardner like almost every episode of By the Numbers, but I was thinking I don't know if I've ever done a Heidi dedicated segment. So what better time to do it than right now? Career high, 147 episodes in, only had one shutout her whole career. And so now we have, after last week with that huge night, the screen time was 12 minutes, 56 seconds. I have a chart tracking her screen time for every episode of her career. So if you're watching with us, you can see the rise and falls. But, you know, once she peaked around her 100th episode, it's stayed high ever since. You know, we can hypothesize about who was in the cast when she started out and who's left the cast since. But I just want to open up the conversation to the chat and to the panelists about Heidi. So, Rebecca, you said you felt like she hosted the show. But in general, like, what are your takes on Heidi and like how she's not only the most tenured woman on the show, but is leading so many sketches now?
Yeah, I mean, I love Heidi. I think she's really, really good. She's someone that like has surpassed like SNL already in culture, where it's like I'll see on Twitter something happens and someone responds like, "I can't wait to see what Heidi does with this next week," or "This is a Heidi-esque character." She is a very, very specific type of character a lot of the time, but in kind of like an Edie Bryant way too, where it's like, yes, although typically she plays the same amount, like in roles that are unexpected for her and different characters that are like, wait, really? Heidi's doing that? It is like always a hit too. I think this chart makes a lot of sense. I'm curious what episode that was in her first season that like she hit like, what is that, the 8-minute mark? Like, no, not even like 7, 8.5, whatever that like for her first season here.
That was Emma Thompson.
Like, okay. I'm curious like what the sketches were, because I'm like, whoa, that's impressive for her first season when it was such a heavy hitting cast too.
I'm going back into the memory right now, so chat, please correct me, but I think if I'm remembering Emma Thompson episode, the cold open was Heidi in the Republican locker room after Brett Kavanaugh got confirmed, and they were all celebrating. So I think Heidi got a lot of screen time in the cold open as like the interviewer, like the sports reporter. So I think that was it for She was in a lot of other stuff that night too. It's, you know, she had 8 minutes, 5 seconds of screen time. That was her 41st episode. But yeah, so Sammy, I'm gonna go over to you. But a lot of times I do a chart. I'm kind of like looking for something and it doesn't always happen, or I find something else along the way. But I want to look at her episodes where she had the most screen time and try to find if there's like some nugget of, oh, this is like who Heidi works with. And I'm almost more pleased of the results that there isn't, because I think it just shows that Heidi's like versatility is so huge, and she doesn't like necessarily work with a certain host. She works with any host. So these are Heidi's episodes that are over 8 minutes. So I'll start with the bottom and go to the top, which is Paul Mescal. So just mentioned Emma Thompson, 8 minutes, 5 seconds. That was in her 41st episode. Then Austin Butler, the Cecily last episode a couple of years ago, 8:21. Megan Thee Stallion, double duty host early a couple of years ago, 8:40. Michael B. Jordan, 9:01. Molly Shannon, end of season 2 years ago, 9:29. The second most recent Adam Driver, 9:49 screen time. Travis Kelce was her first 10-minute episode, or second 10-minute episode. And that one made sense, right? Huge Chiefs fan, lobbied for him to be a host of the show, and definitely felt like she held his hand through a lot of stuff and made him funnier and was great to work with. So that was 10 minutes 9. Timothy Chalamet in her 123rd episode, 11:14. Sydney Sweeney, 11:26. Gerard Carmichael episode was her career high, 11:42, until this week, Paul Mescal, 12:56. So she beat her career high by over a minute. So, Sammy, any commentary on that, or just general Heidi adoration?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a bit of a trend there as far as, the Emma Thompsons, the Austin Butlers, the Gerard Carmichaels, kind of like the first time hosts where, maybe, I mean, Gerard obviously has a background in comedy, but maybe they don't have, the biggest comedy footprint. And, we trust Heidi, and let's let Heidi do something at Update this week. Let's, give her some opportunities to get some stuff on, to kind of help elevate the host in this episode. Obviously, you have your Molly Shannons and your Adam Drivers in there as well. But yeah, I mean, thoughts on Heidi in general. I think one of my first sort of takes on the SNL Stats days was that Heidi is so committed to the character she brings to Update that, like, I can see her being somebody who, becomes like a dramatic actor one day and wins like an Oscar or something like that. Like, I really do feel like she, I'm so curious to see like what her post SNL career looks like, especially in this sort of landscape where we're not getting, just comedy vehicles with like one or two funny people in them, and just seeing what they do. Like, I wish we would get the Heidi Gardner sort of buddy comedy, or Bridesmaids, or Superbad, or whatever. But yeah, I love Heidi. I'm glad that she's continuing to bring stuff to the Update desk. I really do feel like when her career is over, we'll look back and she will definitely be one of, I think, the top Update contributors in the show's history. Somebody who is able to kind of just bring new takes to the thing that she kind of does the best. It's like, I don't know exactly how to articulate that, but I just feel like she can just tap in to such specificities of certain sort of tropes and mine them into great characters. So yeah, love Heidi. Big fans of Heidi on this podcast.
But Sammy, Honora was already out, and that would have been her dramatic acting role. So that's so unfortunate.
Can we talk about that for a second? The Honora impression is a wild thing. A wild choice. I mean, that entire
please educate me and the folks at home of what that even is.
Well, Honora is a movie that is gonna get nominated for a bunch of Oscars. It's from Sean Baker, who directed The Florida Project and Red Rocket, a lot of great movies over the last couple of years. Mikey Madison's the star. She's somebody who I'd love to see host SNL. She was in,
and I think there's a big shot she could take the Oscar too. So
yeah, I think she's like the front runner for Best Actress. I just thought, not that the impression was bad, but just a wild choice, not something that's, really hit mainstream necessarily. I mean, there are a lot of wild choices in that Wicked audition sketch, as somebody who loves that recurring sketch from back in the day. Just very interesting casting choices. I'll say that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Quick correction. I looked up that post-game Kavanaugh Cold Open. That was in season 44, episode 2. That's the Aquafina episode. So I was wrong on that one. That was 4 minutes, 30 seconds of screen time, though. So it was big for Heidi that night. In the Emma Thompson episode, she did a Billy Gizmert. That was her longest appearance on that episode. So she was, I guess, more versatility around the show than just a cold open. But I did pull up her longest appearances because we didn't really talk about Update too much. So I mentioned Billy Gizmert, but we have Every Boxer's Girlfriend, Angel, of course. And she's done a lot of like unhinged older women, like Great Aunt Pat back in season 48. I think that was the one who was like really aggressively pursuing Colin Jost, if I'm not mistaken. I think Mikey Day came out as the butler. and she groped him. So I think that's my memory of that's correct of that. But also a lot of kind of Mikey Day-esque roles of being the interviewer or just being the person who can deliver the laughs like every time that a new person comes up. So we saw that with the red carpet this week with the Bob Dylan movie. So looking at that,
that's
like
what I was gonna say about her. Like, if we have a stat of how many times she was like an interviewer or like a news anchor or something like that, I feel like that'd be fascinating because besides her like update characters, that is like the go-to thing in my mind that she does. So I think that would be good. Also, if you're a big fan, Mike, of Heidi, she was just on an episode of Not Skinny But Not Fat, where she talked about SNL and a lot of her time, and she really dove deep into Travis Kelce. That like, she's like, I don't want to take credit for him being a host, but also like, yeah, I'm basically the reason he was a host on the show, and it was really cool to get to hear her talk about SNL to an audience of people that are not like SNL super fans.
Is that a podcast?
Yeah, it's
Okay, cool.
like she started as like an Instagram blog type person, and then she's a podcast. It's called Not Skinny But Not Fat, and it's like not for people who are like avid SNL listeners. So it is always interesting to hear like cast members speak to not like our fan base and us that are really diehard SNL fans.
So I did hear on the Julian Edelman Games with Names podcast, we talk about football, and she's knows a lot about football. So when I was hanging with Heidi, I told her like, you were so great in that podcast. We started talking about the NFL draft and how the Pats were drafting a new quarterback, and I was like, oh, I want Jaden Daniels, and I think Heidi or might have been John were like, oh, you're gonna get Drake May, and then we have Drake May, and we're happy about it. So, but Jaden Daniels is doing great. So yeah, I think seeing Heidi on commercials and podcasts, definitely like her face is more recognized than just in our world, which I love to see. I want to give a shout out to end of season 45, Daniel Craig, famously said, ladies and gentlemen, the weekend, where Heidi was in a deep quote off with Daniel Craig. She was in that for 3 minutes 41. So looking at sketches that aren't update or cold opens, that's a good one for me. So Sammy, I saw you smile ear to ear. You remember that one?
Not at all, but that was like right before COVID, right? That was like the last show before COVID, right? So I think that definitely. I feel like besides that one, ladies and gentlemen, the weekend meme, I think that once I get to that in my great SNL rewatch, I'll remember that one.
I remember that one very well because I think it was on my birthday or leading into my birthday. And it was basically a week before COVID got scary. And I was with my wife at a hotel bar, which they were projecting the movie Flash Gordon at the bar on the wall. And
cool.
As it got closer to 11:30, it's like, we got to go watch SNL. And that was on that night. So I just remember that exact night of Daniel Craig being the last host before things got really weird. So just, take a look at this chart. You can just kind of see where she pops off, but there were definitely some early episodes where in a stacked cast of ladies that Heidi stood out. So just want to shout out to her there. So Rebecca, would you put Heidi Gardner in your top 5, 10, 3, 20? Like, don't have to think about it, don't have to list them all out, but where do you think she'd be for the SNL ladies of all time?
Ladies of all time.
Yes.
Okay, because that definitely makes like that's half the people that wouldn't be on there. Top 15, yes. I don't know if she would make the top 10, but like she would be like close. Like it wouldn't be 15, it'd be like top 12, definitely.
Sammy,
I need to
what
listen
about
out
you?
this. I have a better answer.
I think
next time.
She has not cracked my top 5. It's very possible, just doing the math in my head, she could be in my top 10. But her story is not done at the show, so can only go up from here.
Right, and I think about this cast, and I'm always somebody who's just life philosophy is whatever shall be, like just very Marcus Aurelius about SNL. Like, hey, if you stay for a long time or you're one and done, like I'm just happy that you were there and I saw it. So I was thinking
you've
about.
Always said that.
Yeah, I've always said that, Rebecca. First time Marcus Aurelius got a shout out on the SNL.
Shout
But Heidi is somebody that if I heard like, oh, this is her last season, I'd actually be like really bummed because I just feel like she's just has the space right now. We're holding space for Heidi. And like every week I expect her to have 5+ minutes of screen time. And now this week, getting to track her career best screen time was fun. And also the cold open, seeing her come in with the church chat singers. When I'm doing screen time, you know, when I watch it for the first time, like everybody else, you watch like what's happening and follow the jokes and enjoy yourself. But when I do screen time, I'm looking at every individual and seeing Heidi, how happy she was to be in a church chat with her hero, Dana Carvey, and just be behind him and, you know, say live from New York and do the church lady dance. Definitely warmed my cold heart. So let's move on to, Rebecca, go ahead.
Wait, Mike, before we move on, nothing to do with Heidi. I have a gripe with this episode, and it's with a lot of them, and I want you to do a stat.
All right, we're being too nice tonight. I like this.
No, I need to turn on. I may stop watching if I see Chloe Feynman as Timothy Chalamet one more time. Because it is not funny. It's never been funny. It's never been a good impression. Like, it actually drives me crazy because, first of all, I do think she's very, very talented at impressions, but they tend to take a lot of her impressions and really just like nail them down to the ground. We had Jennifer Coolidge, and then Ariana comes on and does a 10 times better impression of Jennifer Coolidge. And then we had the Britney, which was also never funny. And at the time, whenever I'd come on here, I'd be like, oh, because it was like during a lot of the Britney Spears like drama recently. And I was like, I want to see Chloe do it. And then she did it. And I was like, no. But the Timothy Chalamet is not a good impression. She doesn't say anything more than laugh. And I don't know why they based a whole sketch on it tonight. Like, that is so crazy to me. Does anyone else agree? And I want the stat of how many times she's done it because it's going to make me more mad.
How many times she's done Chalamet? I want to say 4. I think the first time she did it.
No, it's been more. It's been more than that. It has to be.
It might have been. Has it been 3 times this season or just 2?
This season? I think this has only been the first time she's done Chalamet.
No, she did it in the.
Oh, the Wicked one.
Well, no, and she also did it in the Mulaney musical.
Yeah.
I don't know if she did it. I don't know if she did it in the Wicked.
You're right.
The Mulaney musical, I'll have to step in, referee, throw the yellow flag. That is a non-canonical. And she's part of the Chalamet lookalikes, but I do get you on that one. She's doing the same impression.
But Chalamet was at the Chalamet lookalike contest, so I mean, Chalamet,
it's just this is very semantics, but I'm glad you brought that up. I think the first time she did it was in the At Homes, and I think I liked it then because maybe we didn't know enough about Chalamet. So what we did know of him, it was kind of accurate.
So much. He very much in this whole press tour has a mustache. Everything on every red carpet has a little like just a worm on his lip, and they didn't even put a mustache on her for this like the one tonight, and it bothered me so much that I already had to see it again, and that they didn't do a mustache, and that's literally what he's been like walking around looking like for the past few times.
Can I throw a counterpoint real quick?
Yes, please.
I think the impression has been funny in 2 sketches. I think the Dionne Warwick talk show where she just comes out for just a couple seconds, just going, no. Like I think I like that. And I actually did get a good laugh in the Mulaney musical just because it was so topical with the lookalike contest and everything like that.
I also knew it was coming.
I didn't need to see it this weekend.
I do know it was coming though in that case. And you're right, we know so much more about Timothy Chalamet now. Like he's a staple. He's hosted the show. She didn't do it when he hosted.
I think she did. I think they did.
She must have.
I think was that the Dionne Warwick talk show.
Oh, that might have. Yeah, actually.
And I think he might have been a different celebrity.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So
anyway, it bothers me. So
it was SNL at home. I think she did a couple impressions. Melissa was doing like John Mulaney, and she did Chalamet from home. Then she did it second time when he hosted 4 years ago tomorrow, because that was the Chalamet the first time. That was the Dionne Warwick, like Sammy said, and then it was the Woman in Me, Britney Spears reading impressions. That was the third time and the fourth time this week. So canonically 4
and the Mulaney. Why are we discounting that?
I think you gotta count that.
All right,
it's a full impression.
Yeah, I think it's just because of the context. if she was introduced as Chalamet, but I'm definitely open for debate. I mean, this is what I do a lot of my time is thinking about these things and trying to calculate them. So we're officially 4, we're unofficially 5. But yeah, I think Rebecca, it's a good point overall because we've talked about, I think on this roundtable was about like the Trump impression or the Biden impression, how there's been different eras of those people. And of course, they're way, way older than Timmy Chalamet, but there's definitely a different angle. And I think Chloe hasn't updated her angle on Chalamet, so it doesn't feel relevant anymore. So I think it's a good point.
Yeah, I feel like he's not that funny right now. He hasn't done anything that funny. And this is not to say like Chloe, I think she is so talented that there are so many topical things that happen that she could easily whip up an impression of. And she does on social media, and she does that. Why don't we utilize that enough in the show as we did it when she was first on the cast? I feel like she was much more utilized as an impressionist earlier on. And I could say the same with J.A.J. as well.
I like it. I loved seeing, I'm a big Bob Dylan guy, so I love
that was
seeing
good.
that.
See, that was so exciting. That was exciting.
My only complaint is he didn't do enough. Like I would have wanted to see way more of him getting to be like full, unadulterated old Bob Dylan. Like I saw Dylan live, I think last November, and it just he's had talk about different impressions. Like Bob Dylan's had 9 different voices in his career. Like if you put Bob Dylan on shuffle, it'll sound like it's a lot of different artists. So I was listening to Desire by Bob Dylan while prepping for this show. So shout out to Bob. I'm excited to see the movie and see Timmy. So let's move on to 5 questions, but we'll clip that. We'll tag Rebecca. We'll tag Chloe. It's about time the SNN has a full-on war. So let's do
conversation. Starting a conversation.
Yep. Question 1.
Who could it be? Who could it be? I just can't imagine who. Could it be Satan?
Paul Mescal was the 5th SNL host born in the Republic of Ireland. So there's other cultural Irish, like, Liam Neeson, Saoirse Ronan, but 5th officially born in the Republic. Other than the U.S., I'll just say the U.S., what country's people do you think are the most naturally funny? Sammy, to you first.
Well, I was going over these questions earlier with my girlfriend, and she wanted to know how politically correct it was to ask this question.
What are you calling me out right now?
I'm not calling you out. I'm not calling you out. I'm just sharing alternative perspectives. No, I will answer the question though. For me, this naturally to me goes to accents. This might be where she was going with it, but
okay.
I
was thinking more of like comedians.
Yeah. Well, okay. It kind of goes with comedians. I laugh so much at this one comedian. Her name's Claudia Doherty she was on the show Love on Netflix. She played like her Australian friend, and something about her accent and just her tone, I think is super naturally funny. I also worked at like a Jewish summer camp over many years, and we had a lot of international staff come through, met many funny Australian people over the years. So that's going to be my answer.
All right. 1 for the Aussies. Rebecca, what do you think?
I was going to say, I think British people overall are funny. Like, I think there's just a lot of people that we see in comedy these days that are British, and that's good. Another one is similarly to like Canadians. I do think like we've seen so many big people, and like everyone always forgets that they come from like Canada originally, and they had a big presence in Canada. And then the others, I like the Italian accent, like just gets me. And I feel like I have a bunch of friends that were from Italy and like live there. And they're some of the funniest people ever. So it might be like personal exposure, but like I genuinely think there's so many funny people from Italy.
Yeah, I guess I can't name comedians, but I definitely think that the accent, as Sammy's girlfriend pointed out, might be a factor. I guess I was thinking of more of like contributions to comedy, but also like anecdotally, yeah, for sure. I definitely think Irish people are hilarious and they like to have a good time. So I might say Ireland, but I think if I had to do 2 answers, if I had to say naturally funny, I'd probably go Irish. And if I had to say contributions to comedy, I'd probably say the UK, just because of all the stuff that they invented and stuff. But Canada for sure. I mean, shout out Lauren, shout out Dan Aykroyd and Mike Myers and a lot of SNL greats. So let's go to question 2.
Oh, sweater weather.
Sweater weather.
Sweater weather.
Oh, God, I would.
Finally, sweater weather. Sweater weather. It's about time. It's about time.
Sweater weather.
Sweater weather. Finally, sweater weather.
Sweater weather.
Sweater weather.
All right, Rebecca, give me an up and coming movie or TV star you think a lot of people don't know about yet that should host SNL. I mean, you kind of said the guy from Wicked earlier, so you can say that again. But I was thinking like Paul Mescal, Iowa Debris, Austin Butler, Jacob Elordi, like people we've mentioned tonight that people who knew them consider them very famous, but to a big audience, they were introduced to them. So who should get that introduction next for SNL?
Oh, I have so many people that I actually will talk about later on in the question. So I'm not going to go to that side of things, but Nicola Coughlan, I think she is so funny in Dairy Girls. She was in Bridgerton. She is very, very hysterical. And I think it could be a really good candidate actually for a host. And like, we can actually see that. I stand by Jonathan Bailey. Charlie would have been on my list earlier because like, I do know that how funny she is. And then I know people know him that are fans of SNL, but like Tim Robinson needs his moment. And I think season 50 would be such a good like full circle moment for him. So Nicola Coughlan though, I feel like would just be an incredible host. And like, she's just so charming and funny. And also British, Dairy, wherever Dairy. Okay, I'll figure out that. But has a good accent that I like to hear. So
all right, we'll check her out. Sammy, what do you think? Who should SNL introduce to us?
She's Irish. I was right. Okay.
I have a couple names. Some of these people might be too famous, but I'm not sure. I feel like 90% of these people, if I were to say, if I would tell my mom or my dad this person's name, they probably wouldn't know them. So I feel like this kind of fits the criteria. Rachel Sennett, she's already been impersonated on the show. Would love to see Rachel Sennett host, especially with her HBO show coming out. I really was hoping in this first run of shows we would have gotten a Glenn Powell episode. Obviously, he made a cameo last season. I still think it's going to happen this season, but hasn't happened yet. In the same Paul Mescal vein, Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things. He's going to be Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and the Fantastic Four next year. And my last one, I'm going to say Rachel Zegler. I was really thinking she would host for Hunger Games last year, but saw her in Y2K. She's friends with Kyle Mooney now, so maybe
I guess she bothers me. But
I like
Rachel Sennett, I think will like undoubtedly host when like her HBO show is coming out. The Untitled Rachel Sennett Project as of now. But I think she will be a good host. Also, her best friend's Io, so it's kind of like right there.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if she might have turned it down because, like Sammy said, she did like more like Zendaya or maybe even Sydney Sweeney before she eventually said yes for the Anyone But You movie. But for me, I have no answers because I'm very ignorant about this stuff. So, all right, let's move on. Question 3.
Any questions?
Kind of a follow-up to that one, so my guests can educate me. Should SNL continue to feature cameos of quote-unquote niche celebrities like Trisha Paytas? Because for the people that know and love them, it's very exciting, and we saw Trisha get like a huge ovation in the house. I have, to this day, have no idea who she is, but I'm always happy to see anybody pop in, but could confuse / alienate the majority, but like I said, excite the minority audience who is excited about that. So like, Rebecca, what are your feelings on extending that celebrity universe to internet, TikTok, the niche corners of pop culture?
So I love it. Shocker. I love it. I think it's good. Also, so that's what I was getting at. I think Trisha, if she didn't even make the cameo, I still think she could host like next season. She's lived a million lives and I see that for her. But I love it because this question's only being posed because it's a new generation of references and things that might not happen. But I bet if we went back 20 years, we were having the same conversation. Why are we bringing these people on? And now that they're very well known, I mean, Sammy said there was a Rachel Sennett cameo, like Troye Sivan has been referenced now, 3 times on the show. Like, if there are people that are
So
more
you're,
niche.
You're basically just blaming Bo and Yang.
Yes. I actually had a friend that texted me and was like, is this attributed to Bowen? Are they trying to make Bowen like have the show be more Gen Z focused, or is it just like other people at the cast? And they think if SNL wants to continue to evolve, it has to go through an awkward transitional period where they are making references on both sides of the spectrum. It's that like, yeah, more Gen Z, Gen Alpha references that people will get there, and then more millennial Gen X references that like go over my head and I still watch the show. And I think that just because it's so new, and obviously a lot of like the culture is a little jarring to some people that might not be exposed to it, and being like, why is Trisha Paytas getting the loudest cheers? Like, this was like one of the most viral things on Twitter I saw of like this. And like, think about Domingo. Yes, he was a character in the show, but now he's in like the vernacular of like Gen Z and TikTok culture. And I think for the show to continue its success, it needs to just be comfortable with allowing some of this and letting people that like Gen Z and Gen Alpha and people that they actually want to see, rather than making yet another TikTok sketch of like, oh, we're really trying to appeal to Gen Z. And like, let's do this. I think having Split and having cameos and references on both that like people might not know, like, yeah, I know who Bono is. I actually met him. And I was like, okay, sure. This
Paul
isn't funny
Houston?
to me. Yes, I did meet him. That's a cool story. But it's,
The singer?
I don't know. Yes. I just think it's like, I think it's necessary and needs to happen. And like, there are stuff that I watch and I'm like, what is this? I don't get it at all. But I still watch and I'm not complaining, being like, oh, there's this show is too niche and too referenced. Like Trisha Paytas, for those who know, it's like her, that was major. And they explained her perfectly on the show as famous podcaster. She's a famous podcaster. So I'm okay with it. I want to see more of it, but not too much, because that's when it like teeters on cringe. Like the COVID seasons and like the like couple seasons after, a lot of like the Gen Z focused TikTok sketches were so cringy. Like they didn't appeal the way that they thought it would. So that's my rant. But
Yeah,
I feel strongly about this.
I'll try to summarize Rebecca's points, and then I'm going to go to Sammy to unpack them all, because I'm a facilitator after all. So I think Rebecca said some things that I do agree with, some that I might not agree with, but I think ultimately it's, yes, the show needs to evolve. We all agree, I think, on that. 2, expanding the audience no matter what, whether it's culturally, whether it's demographically for age, whether it's people who just don't watch network TV, who want to find it elsewhere, YouTube, TikTok, elsewhere. And then 3, maybe my counterpoint to one of Rebecca's is, I think the pool of famous people was never this big back in the old days. But I think it's a good point that if you do watch old SNL, maybe even if you were around then and you're rewatching it or watching it for the first time, or you're younger generation, 30s, 20s, teens, and have no idea what's going on in the sketch because you don't get the reference at the time. So I agree with that, but I think that so many people now can be considered famous. So having a niche reference is going to hit or miss for a lot of people. So Sammy, we'll go to you to provide some nuance in this trying time.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. Thanks for facilitating. I think SNL is it's a living document or a time capsule of like 50 years of pop culture. Like, I think that is just what it is, what it has been from the beginning. So I think ultimately, if this is going to continue to move forward, you're going to get cameos like this. And I think it's not necessarily that something new. It's just there's a ton of new forms of media and of ways that people can kind of get famous and become a celebrity. So I guess that is something. But kind of to your point, Mike, I'm watching SNL right now. I'm on season 13. Just watched the Dabney Coleman episode a couple weeks ago. There's a cameo in the cold open from Elvira, who is a sort of, person.
Mistress of Evil.
Yes, someone who I had seen referenced over the years, but I don't have a real reference for her other than she was presenting sort of B movies. Like that is that same, to me, the same level of cameo
Presenting.
as this. What'd you say?
Continue. I said
Okay,
presenting.
yeah, presenting. Yeah, to me that's like the same. It's like almost cut from the same cloth. It's something that's pretty niche. Some people are going to know it, some people are not, and they're going to kind of move on if they didn't get it. And the people who really loved it and want to tell their friends about it are going to tell their friends about it. So yeah, I just think it is an evolution in the sense that we're getting different sources for these cameos, but I think the playbook's still the same. It's still taking who in the culture is relevant and putting them on the show. Do I think the way they did it necessarily was like made for the funniest sketch in the world or the most memorable moment for me? Like, not at all. But I don't think SNL should, stop trying to do that.
Well, let's definitely clip the first 30 seconds of Sammy's answer, because this is why he's a professional podcaster. Such a good point. It's just this broad tapestry, just all this pop culture. We're talking about 976 episodes. That's a lot of ground to cover, politically, musically, movies, TV, sports, everything you could possibly consume. And now, of course, that edges out into podcasts and into TikTok and into influencers and things that I don't know about, or maybe I know a little bit about. But as always, if it's funny and it's fun, why not? I don't mind. Question 4.
This is how you answer a door in my neighborhood.
So we haven't seen a musical guest appear this season outside their usual role of performing music, other than a couple seconds in a TikTok sketch, like Rebecca mentioned. So we saw Billy for like 3 seconds at the end of that one. But last season we saw it in 56% of the episodes. So it's definitely a choice last year, maybe a choice this year to not do that, or depending on who they are. So Rebecca, do you enjoy when they had that musical guest crossover into the other part of the show, or is this kind of big season meaning like, oh, we don't need that? Or, what do you think about that?
I love it. They're already there. And like a lot of them, their dream is to be on SNL, and it's so exciting. Or there's someone that comes back very regularly. And I mean, we see very successful musicians like Charlie do double duty and host the show. It's like, I don't know, they're already there. They're rehearsing. We might as well have them be in a cameo, like when it's relevant. I think there are a ton of musical sketches in general. So it's always like, hey, it's a no-brainer that someone can sing would be in the musical sketch. And yeah, I don't know, I love it. I think it's always fun and exciting, and a lot of times very memorable in the way of like just a funny person there. I don't know. It makes me happy. It's not a necessity. I don't think too much about it. I don't end the episode being like, damn, why wasn't Shaboozey in one of the sketches tonight? But sometimes there is a musical guest where I'm like, I actually do think we could have a lot of stuff here. Chapel Rowan, for example, she was already made fun of on the show this season in a probably one of the more controversial sketches from the season so far. It would have been nice to have her in something and go through that, but I like it, but it's not make or break to me.
Yeah, speaking of that, Moo Dang really fell off. Sammy, what do you think about MG's crossing
because
over?
Moo Dang accurately predicted the election, and then I think everyone got mad at her.
You stole my response. Yeah, I think she low-key got canceled after that. But yeah, I agree. I mean, it's kind of similar to my thought on the cameo question. I just think, yeah, I mean, why not sort of thing. I do feel like maybe this season, obviously we're just getting a lot of cameos from alumni in general. That's maybe taking up some of that oxygen that we maybe typically they'd throw in the musical guest in a sketch. I think there was something Cut for Time that ended up online that wasn't Jelly Roll in a Cut for Time sketch. So that would have
people.
Yeah, so that would have been something, but it's not like I was dying to see Stevie Nicks in like a Please Don't Destroy pre-tape. I mean, maybe
Wait, honestly, kind of show me that.
Maybe in an alternate timeline, that's what we're getting, and maybe that would have been amazing. But yeah, no, I think it's also like a fun way to maybe test out potential hosts. I don't know if they're intentionally doing that when they throw a musical guest in, but I do feel like for this season, it's probably a combination of the other alumni cameos, and then just looking at the actual musical guests, like, we're not seeing a Chris Martin cameo in 2024. I don't know. I don't think so.
Unless Garth and Kat show up. But yeah, right. Sammy, let's just walk down this avenue real quick. Let's just take every beat from the Paul Mescal is Daddy PDD and make it Stevie Nicks is Mommy. Like, that would be a great pre-tape.
Well, there's also when you said that, my first one was like, there was the whole, like, what's this song that's like, that she's like hypnotizing on stage, like someone, they're like floating up and doing all that. Like, there's so much content there. Put Stevie Nicks there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, I at first I introduced it as a bad idea. I think we all agreed that would have been an amazing idea. So maybe that won't be her last time back at SNL. You never know.
Well, I'm not saying her musical performance was worthy of another time to be back on the show.
Wasn't saying that either. Wasn't saying that either.
Yeah, I mean, just like the White Winged Dove, I do love to see some synergy between those parts of the show, just because I feel like it's maybe, on this podcast, we analyze everything. We don't do a ton of music, but when you see that, like, oh, there's actually like a big star here, like Rebecca said, like they're in the building. Those are the cameos that I like when I rewatch. Of course, when I see a surprise show up, it's more of the shock value and the fun of it. Oh, I didn't expect to see them here. But when you do see the MG pop in, it's kind of fun. Like, oh, they actually were down to and offered, first of all, to put a costume on and just walk in. And like Ed Sheeran in that aforementioned Dionne Warwick talk show. I think it was the Kieran Culkin one, maybe. Yeah, it was, because he hosted and Ed Sheeran was the MG. He came in and just like walked off. I was like, oh, it's cool to see Ed Sheeran just kind of pop into a sketch. So let's go to question.
Maybe next episode, Gracie Abrams will be in a sketch and they'll bring Paul back because they're dating in real life. So I think it could be a fun one. But that's also a niche. And I don't know, people don't like the niche references. So I might be putting that out there.
Yeah, or just acknowledge the J.J. Abrams of it all. That would be fun.
That she said she's not a nepo baby because J.J. Abrams isn't in music. In an interview, she said, "I'm not a nepo baby because J.J. Abrams is not in music, so technically I'm not a nepo baby."
Wow,
that is really funny. So maybe Gracie Abrams is very funny. All right, question 5.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
Coming up, Chris Rock set to become a 4-timer, Martin Short a 5-timer. So who's a former cast member that you're shocked has not reached that plateau or hasn't hosted at all or returned frequently? Sammy, I mean, I sent you the list of people who have hosted from the cast, and some of them are not surprising. Some of them are surprising, and I would put Martin Short and Chris Rock as guys that average person wouldn't even know they were on SNL. Have had great careers, so they're still funny and relevant. But who's somebody from SNL that you're just kind of shocked that hasn't been friendly to 8H in their career?
Yeah, I have a couple answers for here, but I'll name one or two. I want to take all these from Rebecca if she's going to say these. But the biggest one for me that is somebody who hasn't frequently appeared is Amy Poehler. Just shocking. Yeah, see, I knew there was a chance.
That was my number one.
Yeah, that one's just shocking especially because there was such a long period of time where she was still on NBC, star of Parks and Recreation. The fact that really nobody from that cast, except for Chris Pratt, I guess Aziz and Aubrey very recently hosted, but still, Amy Poehler is somebody who I definitely is kind of surprised. She's only had 2 appearances. And then I do feel like there's kind of this sort of lost generation of SNL stars with like the Bobbies and Vanessas that I feel like would love to see them host, but I'm curious if we'll ever get anybody from that sort of mini era ever come back.
Yeah, it's like the pre-Kate McKinnon, the Jay, Taryn, Vanessa, Jenny Slate, like those kind of people, right?
Yeah.
So Rebecca, what about you?
You guys keep saying it. I was going to say Jenny Slate as my next one.
Oh, damn it. I'm sorry.
But I'll go. I have 2 more. One, Molly Shannon's only hosted twice. That seems wrong. Like, that's weird. I think she should probably host more than that. And I feel like she's had a lot of good opportunities too recently. And then another one that obviously we saw a lot of him this season, but I thought like Andy Samberg was just going to be like a very regular, like a John Mulaney type host where we see him maybe every season, every other season, and he has not been on the screen enough. We were blessed with him a lot this season, so I think that kind of filled the void. So it probably would have been my top one if we didn't see him so much this season. But I mean, he did a great episode hosting, and I mean, just people love him. So I'm surprised he hasn't hosted more.
Yeah, I agree. I think that will be lost to history when we look back, because we might think of season 50 and think of the political landscape and think about Dana and think about Andy Samberg and Maya Rudolph and remember their regularly recurring roles week to week, that Andy Samberg was basically a stranger for a while, and people even hypothesized like maybe he just didn't want to do the show, so maybe he was wanted but didn't want them back. So the fact that he did come back, I think, was so exciting for the fans because we love Andy, we want to see him, and so when he did, it was so exciting for that reason. So when we look back, I don't know if we'll remember that his absence for so long, but yeah, he did host that great season finale with St. Vincent that I think I talk about often on the show. So I agree with that. I would just say for my kind of boilerplate answer as an SNL analyst, probably Mike Myers. Just think of his success with Austin Powers and Shrek, that he would pop in and host, but he's only hosted once. Seth Meyers works there. He only hosted once. John Lovitz, I think, maybe he didn't ever become a leading man, but another one-timer. So there's plenty of, people that have never hosted and either can't anymore or, it wouldn't make sense. But those people who have done it, so I would assume that, they got over that fear if they had it. But let's look at the ones that have hosted 3 or more post-cast. So I mentioned Eddie Murphy did host in the cast, so we won't count him. We'll count him as a 2 for this exercise. But Maya, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Jimmy Fallon, those are 3s. Dana Carvey, 4, and soon to be Martin Short. Kristen Wiig, Bill Murray, and Will Ferrell in the Five Timers Club. And Tina Fey, 6, and Chevy Chase, 8. So we're about to see a 5th Marty and a 4th Chris Rock to join that list of the most alums to host. But, maybe we'll see Sandler again. Maybe we'll see Pete Davidson again. So, and Seth. So, and David Spade, now he's on the table for sure. And a quick follow-up, Sammy, do you think that there is a holdout because of the 50, or is it more special to have your own moment? Quick follow-up with you.
A holdout as in like some people haven't
50.
hosted. Maybe. I mean, I do think I
should clarify, Sammy. I mean the 50th celebration in February, not season 50.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think like for the 50th celebration, you're sharing the spotlight with so many other people, and it's kind of expected if you're a major player on the show that you're going to be there. So I feel like if I was, an SNL alum, and I had the opportunity to host during the 50th season, that I would do it. One additional shout out real quick. Sudeikis had such a good episode, such a strong episode a couple years ago. I think it's been enough time. And I'm not just saying that because I took him in the draft this year.
I would welcome that. He's my current record breaker for stats, so I want to see how he measures up a second time. So that concludes 5 questions, as we always do end the night with the updated power rankings. A lot of movement, of course. Heidi jumping up, so we'll see where she is now. So number 1 in the power rankings, taking into consideration 8 episodes of stats, appearances, screen times, live from New York, recurring characters, all the stats into one. Bowen Yang is number 1 for 8 weeks in a row. So he might have the season in the bag already, but we'll see, because he's 93.5. That means he's about 13 points ahead of number 2, which is now Heidi Gardner. She leaped Colin Jost because, as I mentioned earlier, Colin Jost had a lot less screen time. He had no desk correspondent next to him this week. So it's kind of all he has, right? I mean, he was in the Lonely Island sketch very last episode. So Heidi's at 80.8. Colin Jost, number 3, at a 78.5. So he drops down with his lowest score of the year. Sarah Sherman, another great week, but is now at number 4, 77.7. Dizzy Mukes, 77.5. I will pause there because I haven't talked to Rebecca in a while. What do you think about this top 5 that includes Sarah Sherman and Andrew Dismukes? That means I haven't mentioned Ego, Keenan, Mikey Day, or Chloe yet.
Yeah, very shocked about Keenan not being in that. I mean, I feel like he's been on the show a really long time and always kind of held strong at the top of appearances. There's no shocker that Bowen and Heidi and Sarah are kind of leading this up. And even Andrew Dismukes too, because I feel like whenever he's in the episode, he's in it like he's fully in the sketch. He's not just ever like a background player, at least not as often as everyone else. But it really is shocking to see Keenan at 9 and Chloe at 12. Like that one to me, I was like, wait, where's Chloe? I was like looking at the top half and I was like, Chloe. Oh, wow. She's far down. I feel like that's very, very shocking to me. I mean, Keenan over time, it makes sense naturally, like make space, but very happy to see Bowen and Sarah up there too on the top. I feel like they've deserved and like worked really, really hard and steadily to get there. And like Heidi, as we've already given her flowers this episode.
So we have seen Sarah make her second, maybe last appearance as Matt Gaetz on SNL. So, but Sarah and Andrew, 2 people who are not getting the benefit of those political cold opens in the first, 6 weeks of the show. So for them to be number 4 and 5, that means they put in a lot of work elsewhere. So Sarah, of course, an update, and Dismukes, as always, killing it in the live sketch game. So that's 1 through 5. Number 6, James Austin Johnson, 76.0. Marcelo, 66.5 at number 7. Ego, 65.3 at number 8. Keenan with 2 stat duds in a row. It's now at number 9. So that's crazy for Keenan. He had a huge bounce back week a couple episodes ago before the Charlie XCX episode. And, he did rise way up, but now he's still falling back down because he's at number 9. Michael Che, 54.4. He's at number 10. Mikey Day, 53.3, and a tie with Chloe Feynman. So they're tied at 53.3. Michael Longfellow next, 41.5, also in a tie with Emil Joachim. So last year we saw it with like Chloe Trost outperforming Punky Johnson, and seeing also the other featured players from 48 kind of bouncing around. And it's interesting for me to track when a featured player is ahead of a repertory player. But right now it's basically all chalk except Devin Walker, who's at 16, but we have the rookies at the bottom. But right now, Emil Joachim has a chance to pass safely and be 13th overall. So 15th is
I would put money down though that he will, because again, I really think he looks like Luigi, and a lot of people have been saying it, and I feel like this upcoming episode will heavily feature like that, whether a cold open or a sketch or something. So I think we're going to see him rise up a little more.
All right. I mean, I don't know, Sammy, you want to weigh on that? I feel like SNL shouldn't do a sketch about that.
I think they're going to do something. It was a huge,
they are.
I will say, like,
on update that makes sense, but on like a sketch, like making Emil play a murderer, like I just don't know if that's like what I'd want to see from the show.
I don't know. It was such a cultural thing this week. Like I was like the amount of tweets that I was sending to friends, like it was like the best Twitter day in I don't know how long. Like probably since everyone thought Twitter was going to die like 2 years ago when Elon bought it.
I think they're too the day, like they're all pretty vulgar days that like Twitter kind of goes crazy too. Like
the submarine
the day the queen died, like
tragedy. Yeah.
Like,
but I mean,
Rebecca,
I think
they're going to do it. No,
yeah,
I'm like fairly certain they'll do it with something.
I could see maybe leaning into like the Mario and Luigi type of thing, but not making a featured player like be a murderer. Like that's
maybe they'll lean into
the
this.
internet's thirsting over him. That's it. All of Twitter and stuff, they're not talking about him in a bad light, which is crazy that he's a murderer and is like taking the internet by storm in a positive light. But I think that there's so much content there for them to talk about.
I think they can lean into this whole look-alike contest thing because they have one for
they
murderer.
did. They
so
did.
Like you could lean into like that element if you don't want him to actually.
I need them to do a Dancing with the Stars sketch because it is ridiculous to people to have on there, and now would be the perfect opportunity to have him like being on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, All I'll say is, Emil's on my team this season. I got JJ, I got Emil. If Emil has to play a murderer to get me some stats next week, so be it.
All right. Well, Emil did have another strong week. So 81.4, 89.6 this week, a 61.4 season average. He's really broken out. He's a 41.5, tied with Mikey Long's former player on Sammy's team. So then we go on to Ashley Padilla, who's now ahead of, not in the bottom. So 37.1. She's risen up 3 strong weeks in a row. And then Devin Walker is at 16. So he's the only repertory player who's below not only Emil, but Ashley as well at a 36.8. And then last place right now, dropping, had a good moment in the Gladiator musical, but Jane Wickline, 31.5. So there are the power rankings. Final thoughts, Rebecca North. What do you think?
I love that you do this. And it is so fascinating to me every time you give a specific stat, because you are just so good with that and everything. It's mind boggling. But there's no big shocker besides the Keenan. I really think he's been a huge shocker, and Chloe too. Sorry, the 2 that I mentioned before. Everything else makes a ton of sense though. Looking at this list, I'm yes, that is also kind of what I expected going into the season. So everything's fairly aligned.
That's funny you said that, because I think last By the Numbers, I was saying how this is by far the most shocking stat season I've done. 46, 47, 8, 9, now 50, just because of the stakes of 50. You would think, and I've talked about this a lot, so I won't repeat myself, but you would think you'd go with the vets for 50. And the fact that the rookies are getting so much play, which I love to see, and that those not new but not vet people, the Sarahs, Andrews, and Marcelo now are jumping. Ego, Keenan, Mikey Day, Chloe Feynman, that is wild to me. So Sammy, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, echo what Rebecca said. Just seeing the numbers like this, always crazy. As a day one Andrew Dismukes supporter, very, very happy to see him almost crack the top 3. I mean, it's pretty neck and neck between Colin, Sarah, Dismukes, and even JJ as well. It'll be interesting to see for him. Maybe they'll lean away from some of the Trump stuff until January, but I'm sure we'll be seeing that appearance from him pretty soon. And then Marcelo, the 115 and the 116.8 back to back. The post Domingo bump is really starting to take shape.
The PDD.
Yeah, exactly. The other PDD. So
no,
PDD. So it'll be interesting to see his trajectory. Obviously, we're getting 2 alumni hosted episodes upcoming, so maybe we'll get more opportunity for some of the vets here. Maybe Keenan, I don't know, but should be interesting to see.
Well, as I mentioned in the 5 questions, we do have our first SNL alum host coming up. So we've seen him in cameos. Now we have 2 hosting, Chris Rock this week, Martin Short for the Christmas episode, and we have a nice break. We have the SNL 50 celebration to look forward to on February 16th, but we also have a lot to look forward to on this program. So we have everything you need to know. We have patron sketch breakdown. So if you were a patron and you voted, thank you very much. You'll see that tomorrow on Thursday. So if you're watching this live, tomorrow is Thursday because it's By the Numbers. We do that on Wednesday. So we'll be back next 2 Wednesdays. Actually, we won't. Production note. 2 Wednesdays from now is Christmas Day. So we will not be podcasting live on that day. So we will definitely let you know when the show is available to cover the Martin Short Hosier episode. So we have the Hot Take Show Saturday and Roundtable Monday and By the Numbers Wednesday. So a normal week ahead. Rebecca, thank you so much for coming back. I love getting just an education from you. I feel like I can now move into the outside world with just more knowledge and, talk to the young people. So I appreciate that. Anything you want to the listeners, and thank you so much for the kind words and for being back at the stat desk.
No, thank you for having me. I have fun as always. And follow me at all social medias at Rebarbecue. And tune in. I'm doing the hot take show this Saturday, and I don't usually do the hot take show. I do it like maybe once a year, so I'm very, very excited for that one. So tune in there.
Just like Santa Claus, Rebecca pops up once a year on the hot take show. So I'll be looking forward to that. Sammy, any spots for you coming up? I love hearing you on this program.
Mike, as always, thanks for having me. Yeah, you guys can find me at that Sammy K on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Haven't really been doing much on there since I panicked and made the account a couple weeks ago, but I'm sure at some point I'll make a full jump. Obviously tweeting about all the movies and Oscar season stuff that's starting to brew up. Then here on the SNN, I will be on the Christmas Hot Take show for Martin Short, which I'm very excited about. And also shout out to our friends at the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. I was there a couple weeks ago talking about my guy, Bobby Moynihan. So if you haven't checked that out.
Okay, I was there talking about 80. So that'll be
there. You go. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, thanks. And yeah, talk to you guys later.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning Blue Sky, because I did get a request on there. I have to honor it. So looked it up. Someone asked me, sorry, I can't shout you out, but thanks for the question. If Dana Carvey were a cast member, where would he be in the power rankings? So great question, because he's been in every show. So his average power ranking this season is a 41.3. So that would put him almost in a tie with Longfellow and Emilio.
That's whack.
That's crazy. That's actually crazy.
Wow.
Also on my fantasy squad.
Dana Carvey?
Yeah, for the alumni, yeah.
All right, so that would make Dana Carvey the 15th most valuable cast member of season 50. So he's ahead of 3 actual cast members. So thank you for the question on Blue Sky. I am on there. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, at SNL Mike Murray. Of course, you have to shout out our presenting partner, LateNighter.com. And can't wait to see you guys next week to talk about Chris Rock. We will see you then, everybody. Thank you so much.